Greetings. Hello, my name is Todd Long. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Fulton County. And next to me is Eric Bosman. And Eric is a consultant with Kimberly Horn, and he and I are going to spend a little bit of time with you this morning talking about a topic that you probably all care about immensely, and that's transit and traffic. So as Fulton County has moved forward in the last several years, I think everybody would call themselves a traffic expert, and everybody's got ideas on how to do transportation better in Georgia. But in Fulton County, about a year and a half ago, we were blessed with the passage of a transportation local option sales tax. And that sales tax is working out great. Each city is getting money, but that money mostly is used for roads and bridges. So there's a lot of discussion among leaders about how to do more in the area of transit. So 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, when Atlanta passed their local transit tax, which was addition to the original MARTA tax, which has been in place for 40-something years, they have half penny of extra money for MARTA in the city limits of Atlanta. Outside of the city limits of Atlanta, Fulton County doesn't enjoy that. So we just have the regular 1 penny MARTA sales tax that has been in place for years. So there's been a discussion about what do we do about getting additional money and additional projects that will move people along the lines of transit. So in light of that, the city mayors outside of Atlanta, which are 14 of them, and the Board of Commissioners got together last February and March and said, let's do a transit study and determine, based on different levels of revenue, what we could get if we raised additional money for transit. So we went out and hired a consulting firm. We hired Kimberly Horn, which is a local firm here in Atlanta, and H&TB, which is another local firm, and several subs. And this consulting firm did a fantastic job laying out a game plan for us on different alternatives we can look at. In Thursday afternoon, they presented to the mayors several options for them to consider as we go into the General Assembly session for 2018. So I'm going to let Eric just kind of open us up with a little opening bit, and then we're going to go into some slides that you can see a lot more details on.
Thanks, Todd. So over the next 10 to 15 minutes, we're going to walk you through the presentation that we gave to the Fulton County Commission and the mayors of Fulton County on Thursday, December 14th. It includes an overview of some of the background of the study and what we've done over the last 8 months to work with the community to define the vision for the future of transit in Fulton County, as well as the various modes of transit, a market-based vision for where we're headed, and then 4 scenarios that are tied to different funding levels that we may be able to explore in Fulton County over the next 20 to 40 years. In addition to this presentation, you can use the website in order to provide your input and comments, and there will be a series of public meetings in January in order to go out to the public and meet with you in person. So for the next 10-15 minutes, we'll go through that presentation and provide you more options for providing input into the Fulton County Transit Master Plan process.
Well, thank you. Looking forward to it.
So this presentation includes some background on the Fulton County Transit Master Plan, the modes of transit that are under consideration, a market-based scenario which outlines our vision for transit in Fulton County, and then 4 scenarios based on funding constraints for what we may be able to fund over the next 20 to 40 years. The Fulton County Transit Master Plan process began back in April and has occurred over 3 phases of work. The first phase included meeting with each of the 14 cities to understand their vision for the future of their community and understanding existing transit conditions in Fulton County today. The second phase of work included the development of over 47 individual scenarios looking at our transit possibilities and transit future, and the third phase has included development of the Transit Master Plan and now review by the Fulton County Commission and mayors. Throughout the process, public engagement has been a major element. Over the last 6 months, we've conducted 26 public meetings across all 14 cities, 12 meetings with special population groups, including seniors, the disabled, and visually impaired, participated in a number of community events, and we've had a series of meetings with our technical committee, including representatives from Fulton County, each of the cities, MARTA, ARC, and the State Road and Tollway Authority, as well as a financial task force comprised of 7 business, community, and city financial leaders to review and affirm our financial assumptions. Additionally, we've held a number of stakeholder interviews throughout the county with community and city leaders and conducted 2 rounds of public surveys on the project website. To begin the process, we worked with community and city leaders throughout the county to understand the vision for each community, including the location of its major activity centers and the corridors that should be studied as part of this process. In North Fulton County, that's included Georgia 400, I-285, Holcomb Bridge Road, Old Milton Parkway and State Bridge Road to Johns Creek, Highway 141, which is Medlock Bridge, Windward Parkway, segments of Highway 9 from downtown Sandy Springs to downtown Alpharetta, and the Johnson Ferry Abernathy Road corridor, which connects East Cobb to Perimeter Center. In addition to public input, we also looked at the data related to existing and projected population, employment, and transit likely populations. As you can see on the slide now, this shows our employment density projected to 2040, and you can see the heavy concentration of jobs up the Highway 9 and 400 corridor, both in the city of Sandy Springs and in North Fulton in the Alpharetta area and Roswell area between Holcomb Bridge Road and Old Milton Parkway. Our transit likely populations include looking at seniors, young professionals, those with limited access to automobiles, to make sure that any recommendation that we make as part of the transit study would put transit in a location where there are riders that are likely to use it. The same analysis was conducted in South Fulton County, and that prioritized I-85 going south, Roosevelt Highway, Highway 29 through the cities of College Park, South Fulton, Union City, Fairburn, and Palmetto, South Fulton Parkway, the Norfolk Southern Rail connection through the city of Hapeville into Clayton County, Fulton Industrial Boulevard, Camp Creek Parkway, Flat Shoals Road, and Highway 74. Similar to the analysis shown in North Fulton, we also looked at population density, employment density in South Fulton, which is heavily clustered around Highway 29, South Fulton Parkway, and Fulton Industrial Boulevard, and our transit likely populations, which are similarly located within the Tri-Cities area along I-285, along Highway 29 going south to the city of Palmetto, and along Camp Creek Parkway and Fulton Industrial Boulevard. Through the public process, we defined a series of 6 guiding principles that are being used in order to evaluate each of the corridors and to determine the proper mode of transit looking forward for each of those major corridors. From the guiding principles, the team developed a detailed feasibility study that looks at the current and projected needs along each corridor, the feasibility of each mode of transit under consideration along those corridors, and how well each mode supports the guiding principles that were shown on the last slide, including how do we enhance access to employment in key destinations, use transit to be a catalyst for economic development, provide faster, more reliable mobility that mitigates congestion on our major corridors, enhance transportation options and access for those populations that need it, maximize our return on investment, and establish a framework for greater regional connectivity. Throughout the months of August and September, we conducted 14 public meetings, 1 in each municipality, in order to give the public an opportunity to provide input into the initial scenarios and alternatives for transit in Fulton County. Before we get into looking at each of the individual scenarios, let's quickly highlight the transit modes that have been considered as part of this master plan. When we speak of transit in the Atlanta region, most folks think of heavy rail and local bus service, which are generally the services that are provided by MARTA, our most well-known service provider. But as we look decades into the future, we want to be open to additional modes of transit that use a higher form of technology or are less expensive to implement. So in addition to heavy rail, the study has also considered looking at corridors for light rail in the future, which can be provided at a lower cost, but runs at slightly lower speeds and with a lower capacity. Additionally, we've also looked at a number of different modifications of bus rapid transit, BRT. This is a mode of transit we don't have in the Atlanta region today. And while it uses rubber-tired vehicles that are more closely aligned to buses for flexibility, they run in managed lanes or in their own dedicated lane, so that they run with the efficiency of a rail service, but at a fraction of the cost. We've looked at a variety of different modes. BRT in express lanes, which is a possibility on the Georgia 400 corridor as managed lanes are implemented on that corridor over the coming years. We've also looked at BRT along major corridors. What's important to note is when this study refers to bus rapid transit, that is running rubber-wheeled vehicles within their own lanes or within a managed lane on our major corridors in order to maintain their efficiency and their effectiveness. For new types of arterial rapid transit, we're looking at rubber-tired vehicles that are running to some degree in mixed traffic, but that have signal coordination and prioritization in order to stay on time and to maintain their efficiency. So arterial rapid transit on our major corridors is at a lower cost and lower capacity, but does run in mixed traffic within those corridors. In addition to frequent and local fixed bus service, we've also included a new type of flex or microtransit technology as a proposal within this master plan. Think of this as an Uber carpool, where we're using technology, a smartphone app, in order for citizens to be able to dial a ride, put themselves into the queue, and then these flex or microtransit services would run smaller vehicles within a confined geographic area to transport citizens back and forth to the major rail, BRT, and ART trunk lines. One of the first major goals of the Transit Master Plan was to establish a market-based scenario. This scenario defines our vision for transit in Fulton County if we match the proper mode of transit with the development style, level, and intensity along each of our major corridors, not just today, but looking 20 to 40 years in the future. This particular scenario is not constrained from a funding standpoint, but it's what we would recommend that the county move forward with if money were no object. The market-based scenario to match our transit needs to our community needs includes running heavy rail up Georgia 400 from North Springs to Holcomb Bridge, extending the south line through the city of Hapeville into Clayton County, and extending the west line out I-20 to Fulton Industrial Boulevard. The plan recommends the establishment of a light rail system along 285, ideally from the Cumberland Market on the west to Doraville and/or Gwinnett County on the east, bus rapid transit lines on Georgia 400 north of Holcomb Bridge to Windward, east-west on Holcomb Bridge, north-south on Highway 141 Medlock Bridge through the city of Johns Creek, and then in South Fulton on Highway 29 and South Fulton Parkway. Arterial rapid transit lines would be constructed on Roswell Road from downtown Sandy Springs to downtown Alpharetta, Old Milton Parkway from downtown Alpharetta to Medlock Bridge, Camp Creek Parkway from the College Park MARTA station or the airport out to Fulton Industrial Boulevard, and Fulton Industrial Boulevard from Camp Creek Parkway to I-20. The plan also includes enhancements for frequent local bus along Johnson Ferry Road in North Fulton. In addition to these major capital improvements, the market-based scenario and all of the following funding scenarios that we look at include 3 short-term local funding buckets. A $25 million program to improve sidewalks and access through last-mile connectivity in each of the cities to existing and proposed transit stops, $25 million to improve existing bus stops, including shelters, benches, trash receptacles, and lighting, and $30 million to enhance current rail stations in the cities of East Point, College Park, and Sandy Springs. Now let's look at the 4 scenarios under our potential funding mechanisms within Fulton County. The first scenario looks at taking the remaining $0.25 under state law in Fulton County and using that $0.25 for 40 years to fund the transit expansion and extensions. With that $0.25, the county could build and operate a bus rapid transit line on Georgia 400 from North Springs to Old Milton Parkway, east and west along Holcomb Bridge Road, south along South Fulton Parkway from College Park to Highway 92, and an arterial rapid transit line from the city of College Park to the city of Palmetto down Highway 29. This would be a $2.4 billion program in order to extend 2 transit lines in North Fulton and 2 transit lines in South Fulton. If the county wanted to fund one of the major rail extensions within the market-based plan, the highest priority rail extension is up the Georgia 400 corridor from North Springs to Holcomb Bridge Road. This is based on the level of need, feasibility, congestion, and potential return on investment. If the county were to do a half-cent sales tax over 40 years, that would allow them to fund and operate the heavy rail corridor along Georgia 400 from North Springs to Holcomb Bridge for 40 years, and then transition to a BRT line from Georgia 400 from Holcomb Bridge to Old Milton Parkway. In South Fulton, the half cent would fund bus rapid transit down the South Fulton Parkway corridor to Highway 92 and down the Highway 29 corridor to the city of Palmetto. While the half cent for 40 years would allow the county to fund a major rail line, it limits the other geography that we can serve within the county. Whereas the third scenario takes that same half cent but invests it in a BRTIART transit infrastructure that puts no rail in North or South Fulton County. With that same half cent, but investing in BRTIART versus rail, the county can extend the transit program throughout almost the full geographic extent of the market-based scenario. This would include BRT lines on Georgia 400 to Old Milton Parkway, Holcomb Bridge Road, Highway 29 and South Fulton Parkway in South Fulton, and then additionally arterial rapid transit lines on Roswell Road from downtown Sandy Springs to downtown Alpharetta, Old Milton Parkway from downtown Alpharetta to Johns Creek, and Highway 141 Medlock Bridge from the Forsyth County line down to the Gwinnett County line. Would also include arterial rapid transit along Camp Creek Parkway in Fulton Industrial Boulevard in a way that would link I-20 down to the airport through South Fulton and our major employment sectors. So the half cent scenario with BRTIART does not include rail in any part of the county, but helps us reach almost the full geography and leaves rail to a secondary funding stream or cooperation with the region or state in order to provide that service. The fourth scenario is built upon the half cent BRTIART, but includes the heavy rail line from Georgia 400 from North Springs to Holcomb Bridge. Now we call this the half cent plus because Fulton County may be able to provide the half cent, but there would still be an over $2 billion gap in order to provide the rail line from North Springs to Holcomb Bridge Road. So this then would mean Fulton County working with the region or with the state in order to identify a second funding source in addition to a half cent transit sales tax in Fulton County in order to completely build out the transit vision over the next 20 to 30 years. The final few slides look at the transit sales tax revenue that would be generated through each of the scenarios and also includes a quick overview of the funding assumptions, including all of these scenarios include the three local funding programs shown in an earlier slide, are based on a 40-year duration, are based on projections from Georgia State University with additional input from recently approved measures in Fulton County and the city of Atlanta, as well as recent proceeds from the 3/4 cent T-SPLOST, which is funding our roadway improvements in Fulton County. The new transit sales tax, if it moves forward, could begin in as early as the spring of 2019. If one of the half cent scenarios is selected, a half cent sales tax could not begin collection until 2022. And each of the scenarios includes is based on a long-term cash flow model, which includes level of services, capital cost, operating costs, tax rates, bonds, and other funding needs. Again, these scenarios will be discussed and presented to the public in a series of public meetings in January. January 10th will be in Roswell at the Best Western at Holcomb Bridge and Georgia 400. January 18th at the South Fulton Service Center on Stonewell Tell Road. On January 23rd at the Windward Marriott at Windward and Georgia 400. And on January 24th at College Park City Hall at 3667 Main Street in downtown College Park. We look forward to your input, to your comments, and hopefully seeing you at one of these upcoming meetings. If you'd like to get further information on the Fulton County Transit Master Plan, please visit our webpage at www.fultoncountyga.gov/TMP Transit Master Plan-home. In addition to this presentation, you can also find all of the previous presentations, maps, and additional feedback mechanisms on the website.